Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Football Insomniac podcast. I'm your host, Colin Watt, and today I'm delighted to be joined by BT and Premier Sports commentator Rory Hamilton. He's a voice you'll have heard before. You might not recognise the face, but it's good to put that face to a name. Rory, it's great to have you here on the show today.
Yeah, thank you. It's good to be on. It's probably the quite nice thing about being a commentator rather than a presenter, is that you can go under the radar a wee bit, which is quite good. Then people don't recognise you when you're actually at football games.
Well, that is going to be completely ruined today once you've shown your face. We are live on Facebook, on Twitter, and on YouTube. We're live on YouTube on A State of Mind. We are getting very close now to 11,000 subscribers, so if you haven't already done so, please do subscribe, share the podcast with your friends, with your family, even share it with the people you don't like. Let's get the audience figures growing as we continue our development. With Rory today, we're going to be discussing some of the week's football topics, including the ugly racist incident that took place at the weekend between Cadiz and Valencia. We'll go into that. Rory obviously was on commentary for the game against Rangers and Slavia, and we'll hear some of his thoughts of what happened on the night. We'll also be discussing the vaccine passports. It looks as if the SFA are confirming today they're looking to try and get 15,000 fans in for the games in the Euros over the summer coming up. The English FA are looking to get 21,000 in for the FA Cup final. Is it a fair process of having to be vaccinated to get in? Does that discriminate against some fans, or is it completely necessary? We'll also be discussing Sergio Aguero now that he is leaving Manchester City. Is Erling Haaland the natural replacement for Sergio? Rory will be telling us his dream football dinner party, and we'll also be discussing some of Rory's career so far, some of his highlights, some of his lowlights, and maybe I'll see if I can get who his favourite co-commentator is out of him later on in the show. But no, it's great to have you on today, Rory. Obviously, we're smack bang in the middle of another bout of European football. You've commentated on plenty of it for BT Sports over the last couple of days. Over the last couple of years, sorry. Have you managed to catch much of the competition this year, especially the games last night?
Yeah, I was kind of flicking between the games last night with Real Madrid, Liverpool and Man City, Dortmund. Whenever there's a selection of games, like even during the group stages, and if there's not a Scottish team involved, you look down the list of whatever, there's 8 games or something maybe on the Tuesday night. And for some reason, I don't even support them, but I always think when I see Dortmund, I'm like, that's going to be a good game. so I find them a really attractive team to watch. And I love their ground and their fans. Obviously, at the moment, that's very different. But so I mainly watched the Man City Dortmund game, particularly in amazement when I turned on, because I was busy for the opening 20 minutes or half an hour or something like that, and then I turned it on, and it was like right on the moment that the referee gave Man City their penalty that went to VAR that got overturned, and then the incident up the other end with Jude Bellingham, and it was just an absolute amazement at how poor the officiating was for such a big game. And then for half time, I went over and had a wee check of what was going on over in Madrid as well. So it was. I wouldn't say I have followed the Champions League quite as strongly as I would usually. I would say I find football harder to watch now without fans. I think it plays a massive role. Maybe we didn't quite appreciate it. I mean, I've always been a massive fan and advocate of different atmospheres, and that's what I love going to football stadiums all over Europe for, is sampling different atmospheres. And it can make a game a little bit more stale at the moment. You get a lot more boring games now than you used to, just because you can't just channel into the passion of the people that are watching it. And I find it commentating as well, I find it much more difficult.
Certainly, it looks as if the two English teams are in a good position. I mean, we talk about refereeing decisions. The refereeing decision for Jude Bellingham to not get that goal last night was absolutely ridiculous. And the fact you've still got VAR there and they still managed to get something like that so criminally wrong, it just shows you how far football still has to come. But I get your point. I've kind of drifted out of the kind of love of watching the Champions League and the Europa League on a Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. It just feels as if like you're so far detached from the games because you've not managed to be there. That's been well over 12 months now since we were last in a ground. Obviously not yourself, but like fans across the country. So there is going to be that point where it's like it's just not the same anymore.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. And I think some players might thrive on that because you're taking away a certain element of pressure. There might be some that do better because there aren't fans, and others that really thrive on an atmosphere and take themselves to another level that they find it more difficult to perform. It might feel like a bit of a training exercise for them, and they need that extra motivation just to take them to the next level that's required. But I think they're nicely poised, the games from last night. Actually, I certainly wouldn't rule Liverpool out. Getting that away goal is big, and Dortmund, Man City. I mean, 2-1's a good score to take back to Germany for Borussia Dortmund. But
Definitely,
seeing
yeah.
the way that Man City played, like I'd be pretty sure that they would score over there. Thought Phil Foden was absolutely brilliant. That's one of the best I've seen him play. He's just an absolutely outstanding talent.
Special talent, yeah, definitely. I think it does lose its touch not having the fans there, but as you say, there's still some fantastic players on show. You've got Jude Bellingham, Phil Foden, and someone we'll touch on later on in the show, Sergio Aguero. It is the pinnacle of European football at the minute, and you've managed to commentate on some of these games, not just in the Champions League, but also in the Europa League. And Matt Lawless comes in here on YouTube just to say, Rory's a fantastic commentator. Callum McGregor's goal against Zenit and then Cham's against Lazio, both made with the commentary. So I think what you've also got to take into it is having the right commentary team also helps with the occasion as well. And one look on social media last night told me that Steve McManaman is probably one of the least liked commentators in football. Have you ever had the chance to work with Steve before? Or have you heard anything like that?
Yeah. I mean, I've worked with Steve, and he's a really top commentator and top guy. Got on really well with him. I've been fortunate enough to do a few games in the English Premier League this year, and worked with a number of co-commentators, from Steve to Leon Osman, Martin Keown. There's probably some that I'm missing out as well. Lucy Ward was very good. I hope I don't miss anyone out. And Chris Sutton as well, of course, because he's my main right-hand man in the gantry. So I did a game recently with him, which was really nice to catch up again. Because we're not doing so many games up here, obviously, anymore, with BT not having the right to the leagues.
It all comes down to personal taste, but doesn't it? I mean, some people you just love, some people you just not love, and that's the thing. As long as they're giving a great opinion on the game, that's all that matters, isn't it? Yeah,
and these guys they're experts in that they have experienced something that none of us have. They have been on the pitch, so whether you like or you dislike the way that they say it, they have experience of it. So their opinion does count.
Exactly.
But it's all the same. It happens with commentators. You get some people just don't like the sound of your voice, or there might be something that you said 5 years ago in a game and they can never forgive you for it. But it's interesting when you work with a co-commentator, and particularly at the moment, with lockdown, you now just arrive at a ground. You go through all your processes to make sure that you passed all the relevant tests to be allowed into the stadium, and then you go up to the gantry, and I don't know, maybe an hour before the co-commentator might appear, and you've actually just got that hour. You obviously getting team news and things like that coming in, but if that's somebody that you've never worked with before, you're then in amongst the work that you're doing and all the tests and trying to pick out maybe some traits in some of the players, maybe a boot color or haircut or something like that, just to get a better recognition of them. You're also trying to develop a relationship with somebody so that you actually are natural when you're on air for 90 minutes. It's quite a strange thing, and it's something that maybe I didn't even consider before this season, because it would be every game that I would work with Chris Sutton, Stephen Craig, and Michael Stewart, Alex Ray more recently. But you have all that time beforehand. We would usually arrive at a ground 4 hours before and chat, and there would be other social occasions where you meet up, and so they become your mates. Whereas at the moment, you're just rocking up, and then it's suddenly right, you two. You get on really well for the next 90 minutes, and you do. But it's interesting that you're just put in that situation, and you have to just make yourselves get on.
It sounds as if it's like the football commentary version of first dates. You've just been thrown together with someone you've not met before and see how it goes. But I mean, I don't think anybody could really tell, because the standard of commentary, certainly from yourself, from Chris, from Stephen, from everybody in the BT and Premier Sports team, it's been top class. And I think we'll touch on it later on when we discuss your career, but the loss of Scottish football and BT Sport was certainly a hard thing for a lot of fans to take, because if you were giving fans a choice between sticking with BT Sport or going to Sky Sports, a lot of fans would have said BT Sport, because BT seemed to offer some fantastic, great insight into the Scottish game, and they really heavily promoted it as well. When you found out that the Scottish game was sort of moving away from BT Sport, what was the feeling amongst the guys?
It was, I remember, I can't remember exactly what the first game back when we found out. But obviously everyone was really, really down about that. I'd come back. I found out the news. I'd been away at the Albania-Scotland game because I travel with Scotland all over, and I'd done our classic planes, trains, and automobiles to get back. So we'd flown into Rome. We'd got a train down to Bari. We got a ferry over to Albania, and then a taxi up to the capital. Got the same taxi the next day to the game. Then hired a car, went over to Montenegro and met up with a friend of mine who owns a vineyard. So had a couple of bottles of wine with him, and then I think we flew back via Stockholm or Gothenburg, and then into Edinburgh, and then it was like bus back to Glasgow, and then tube back to the West End, and I was just walking home when the news broke. So obviously it was really sad. I managed to get 3 great years as the lead commentator for BT Sport, and it was absolutely magnificent. What an experience it was. And continues to be, because we're still covering the European football, but obviously the bread and butter is the league. But I do remember, I think we were maybe at Dens Park, somewhere like that, and Grant Phillips he's the guy that puts it all together, and I remember him sitting us down, and because obviously that everyone's quite downhearted at not and concerned about their futures. Mm-hmm. But he sat down and said, we can mump and moan about this, and you can put in little effort if you want, but that's not what got us to where we are. Everyone's put in a fantastic effort over the years, and we've got 18 months, because just for the time for the contract, we've got 18 months of the contract to run. Give it your best. Go out on a high, and the reaction from everyone was to take exactly that attitude. And even from that game on, because I wondered, even driving up to the ground, you wonder what the atmosphere is going to be like and things like that. But it was very much just one of, let's just get on with things and do them the way that they always have been.
And obviously, you've still got that connection to Scottish football, working with Premier Sports, and as you mentioned, doing the European football for BT this season. So it isn't as if you've completely gone away, but working with Premier and having that connection in with the League Cup and the Scottish Cup, I guess it's good to just kind of always feel as if you're back home again.
Yeah, absolutely. I've never left. I've always had a really good relationship with Premier Sports. Actually, I did a pre-season friendly years ago. I can't even remember what year it was. It was Hearts against Man City. I think Osman Sow made his debut in pre-season.
Was that at Tynecastle or Murrayfield? I think
it was at Tynecastle. At Tynecastle, because I did it with John Robertson was on Co-Coms, and he must have turned up. I was already on air. I was chatting, and they were like, "Oh, should we get a word from your co-commentator?" He wasn't there, so I had to ad-lib for a wee while. That was right. He made it. He was there. He was there before kickoff, but I think just. I've done a few games with Robbo actually. He's always good fun. Really nice guy. So it's really good to still be a part of it, and at the end, we of course had the Betfred Cup on BT Sport as well, and had some great times on that. So just to continue it with Premier, and even at the time when I think it was the last season or maybe the last two when I was at BT, they were kind enough to let us work for Premier on the Scottish Cup as well, because we all had exclusivity deals that meant that we couldn't work for other broadcasters. But I think when they knew that the contract was going away for the league, that it was in their best interest to let us. So I was really appreciative of that, and it allowed me to continue my relationship with Premier Sports. I also do the rugby for them in the Guinness Pro 14, which is adding in the Rainbow Cup in the next coming weeks, which is, I'm really looking forward to that. It's nice to be able to mix up different sports as well. It keeps it all fresh. So yeah, this year's Betfred Cup was fascinating. I don't think anybody could have predicted the final, the semi-finals, the quarters. I mean, it was bonkers, but it was great fun. That's the unpredictability of cup football, and I think as well that this season we've just done the the third round of the Scottish Cup, and we did Celtic and Rangers, and it was quite straightforward. But one of them will be out when we get to the quarterfinals stage, because of course we've got a Celtic Rangers game coming up, which should be rather interesting, and I think. I like the historical, romantic side of having replays, but at the same time, it's quite nice when they can get settled on the day, particularly with a game like that. It's going to be at Ibrox. Sadly, no fans, of course, but for that to be settled in one game, there's so much weighing on it. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I have to say I'm looking forward to that, Ty. I'm not sure how it's going to go. I know how I want it to go. But we'll talk about that later on, and we'll also go back to your career and some of the stuff that you've done with BT Sport and Premier later on in the show as well. I'll give the chance for the people that's watching us live on Facebook, YouTube and Twitter to get your questions in for Rory, and we'll touch on that towards the end of the show. But on the theme of Premier Sports, one of the channels that you get as part of the Premier Sports package is La Liga TV. And it leads us on to our first topic today, which is the racism row that has kicked off over in Valencia. Now, for anyone that hasn't seen the incident, in the 30th minute of the game between Cadiz and Valencia, Juan Cala and Mukhtar Diakabi had a bit of a run-in with each other, where Cala is, and we have to say this, he is accused of making a racial slur towards Mukhtar. Mukhtar has then since came out in statements and repeated what he has heard. And as I say, with everything that's going on at the minute, we have to say this is alleged what has happened. But Diakabi did not return back to the park. Valencia has claimed that they would have been punished for not finishing the game. Both players were booked, and in the end, Cadiz actually came away with a 2-1 victory. Now, when you take a look at this, it runs such a similar course to what happened only just a couple of weeks ago here in Scotland with Glenn Kamara and Andres Kajela. And at the time, I remember watching the game and I'm going, they should walk off the park. They have to take a stand here. You obviously commentated on that game. Seeing what Diakabi's done and what the way that La Liga has responded back to this, allegedly, is walking off the park the right thing for the players to do?
I think so, but I think at the same time it comes down to the individual. It's a very difficult scenario to ask of, what should you do if you've been racially abused? It comes down to how that individual takes it within themselves. Clearly, it is something that should never ever occur, and I think the harshest punishments should be handed down to those that are found guilty of these sorts of things. I mean, not enough has been done, clearly, because it's been going on for years, and financial punishments and partial closures of stadiums, it doesn't work. It doesn't work at all. It's pointless. And warnings before all that kicks in, and then you maybe get a €50,000 fine. I mean, it's pathetic. That does not tackle the problem. It needs to be far, far harsher. And if, as you're saying, Valencia felt that they had to continue to play the game, otherwise they would have been punished, that defeats the purpose. That should never be the case. And I know the Valencia players met in the changing room, discussed it, and I think Mukhtar Diakabi wanted, supposedly, it's how Valencia have said it, I think, is that he wanted them to go on and finish the game. But he didn't finish the game.
No, he came off straight away. Yeah. So
they were disadvantaged by that entire situation. And I saw the reaction, as we all did, the reaction of Glenn Kamara a couple of weeks ago now. To me, it was obvious, and commentating on it, you could tell that something pretty bad had been said. He was very upset. The other players around him were upset. And when Connor Goldson was informed of what had allegedly been said, he was fuming. And at the time, the game was gone. Because Rangers I think they were down to 10 men at that stage and a couple of goals down. They were never coming back from that. So there was nothing to be gained by making it up and trying to get the game abandoned. If any of that is ever to be suggested, there would be no point. To me, it was obvious. But when a player goes over covering their mouth, which I think should be banned anyway, I thought that beforehand. Before it became an issue with this sort of thing, I thought that it's absolutely ridiculous that players are doing that and having to do it. So I think that's one thing that I would outlaw straight away. There's enough cameras to pick things up. I mean, what else can they be saying? I don't see the point of that. I think that should be something that's outlawed. And going further than that, I just think it has to be the harshest of punishments, which are bans from competing in certain competitions, bans for players that aren't, here's 2 games, here's 3 games. It's, years, I think, if not careers.
You can hear just listening to you the difficulty in discussing what should never be part of the game to begin with. The fact that we're in 2021 and in this season alone, there's been at least a dozen high-profile instances of either abuse on the park, abuse off the park, through social media. And I don't know if it's just me, but I feel as if this year, without the fans being there, it's made it 10 times worse. It's as if this kind of build-up of hatred and bile has just came out this year because fans haven't been in the ground. And there was obviously the movement at the start of the year, when football restarted down south, of taking the knee at football. And teams have now changed their mind to say that it's not working, it's not doing that. And I can understand that, because as the season goes on, it just continues to be every week there's an incident. Even last night, Liverpool came out with a statement to say that 3 of their players had been racially abused on social media. This is probably football's biggest issue at the minute. And I don't think any of the governing bodies, nor the clubs, nor anybody knows how to deal with it. I feel as if we're going back to the way it was maybe 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah, and I mean, it's all very well and good putting out nice videos and posters saying no to racism, but it needs much harder action. There's no doubt about that. It needs to come from the top, and that deals with the on-field stuff. It can also deal with what happens in the stands once fans return. But you mentioned social media, and it really angers me, some of the stuff that you see on social media, and the fact that there seems to be this that the social media companies have the power over everything. So if they don't want something, then nobody can fight it. Well, of course they can, because the power in social media, the clue's in the name. It's with the people that are on it, and that pressure can then come from your celebrities, your footballers, your actors, football clubs, leagues, broadcasters. If they all suddenly take a vow of silence on it and say, well, okay, we're not going to be on this platform.
Mm-hmm.
Thierry Henry has actually come out and said that that's what he's going to do. He won't tweet anymore until it's sorted. Until really what I think Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, there needs to be accountability. So to sign up an account, you need proof that it's you, mm-hmm. essentially. So you can then be accountable for what you write, you type. And then if there is something that is deemed to be a criminal offence by the police, then they can come and punish you for it. And I think that would shut a lot of it down, hopefully, because it's far too easy to just sit behind a keyboard. And we all get wound up by things that happen on the football pitch, not to that extent. That's taken to a whole other level. But people will lose control and think of the way that they can hurt somebody. And when you see a lot of the racist abuse, the bit that is so saddening is that its aim is to dehumanize these men and women, with a monkey emoji or something like that. And that is the breakdown of an entire human psyche. That is what they're trying to do, is to say that you're not human, and that is it's the most disgraceful thing that you could do. So they need to be very, very decisive on this, and it needs to be done really quickly. I think there are a few steps that can be done tomorrow, but we're 3 weeks on from the Glenn Kamara one. It's gone relatively quiet, other than the more recent news that UEFA are investigating, and that's taken 3 weeks to get to this stage. And in the meantime,
far too long.
You have the Diakabi incident. There's been so many incidents of online abuse that it needs to be done now. It's not a case of let's wait till the end of the season and all this kind of. It really angers me.
it's a real sad reflection that when you look back on this season as a whole, that'll be one of the main talking points for years to come, is how we've seen on the park at least 3 major incidents. You talk about the Istanbul Bashikar incident away back earlier in the season, the Glenn Kamara incident, and then obviously you've got the Diakabi incident from the weekend, and the season's not finished yet. I mean, it sounds horrible to say, but going by the odds, there's every chance there's going to be another one of these incidents between now and the end of this season. And it's a sad reflection on football. We've spoke about it on this podcast several times, about these incidents, and it just feels as if nothing's been done. It really will take something from UEFA, from FIFA, to come out and say, for example, the boy from Slavia Prague. If, again, we've got to say allegedly, although I think most people agree that there was definitely something said that was completely out of order. You're banned for 18 months, you're banned for 2 years, and you'd think that that would start to stamp this out of the game. And if you stamp it out of the game, the next thing, as you said, is to stamp it out on social media. And I like that idea of clubs, of players just saying, do you know what, I'm not going to use your platform, because these platforms need these people on them for people to go on and look at them. They need your Thierry Henrys, who's got nearly 1 million followers. You need your Liverpools, your Celtics, your Manchester United, your Arsenals, your Rangers. You need all these teams, because people go on Twitter to see the updates about these people. They're interested in their lives.
The important thing with that is a lot of those guys aren't on social media because they're so desperate to see what the fans think of them or to chat with the fans. They're under pressure from sponsors, from the leagues, from their club, because it's all about profile. And if you're a top football player, you're going to get 7-figure viewers or followers behind you. Therefore, that becomes a money-making, profit-driving option for them. And so that's where a lot of the power lies, is that if the pressure comes off the players and is put onto the social media companies by broadcasters, sponsors, leagues, clubs, individuals, that's where it changes. That's where you change the balance of power.
I really hope that this season, when we bookend it and we start next year with the potential of fans being back in the stadiums, is where we can leave all these incidents behind, that the authorities come out and properly deal with them and deal with the people involved, and that you can say, well, it was a terrible year, but we've left it behind, and when we start back next season, then we can actually look forward to developing the game, developing the reputation of the game going forward, and improving the treatment that we give these players as well. I really do hope it's something that we can look forward to.
Absolutely. But at the same time, we mustn't stop talking about it.
No.
Because the minute you stop talking about it, it gets forgotten about until the next one.
Yeah. Yeah. It's horrible, and it's just been a vicious cycle this year. A complete vicious cycle. It's so hard to talk about something like that and then move on to maybe something that could be potentially more positive. But we are
doing it live during a game.
Well, see, that's why you get paid the bucks. That's why we sit here and commentate on our houses, and we listen to the excellent commentary team like yourself. But it has been announced today, and I've just seen in the last hour or so that Holland and Romania have also confirmed they will definitely have fans in the stadium for Euro 2020, which is taking place in 2021, which is confusing enough. It looks as if Scotland will give the go-ahead for 15,000 fans to be in Hampden for the games that are going to be played. And as part of this, it's potentially going to be that you need to show proof of vaccination alongside a recent negative test, not a positive test. You don't want a positive test. A recent negative test to get inside to the grounds. Now, the question that could be asked here is that discrimination against people that haven't already had the vaccine? Or, as we know, there is plenty of them out there, we've seen them on social media, people that are against getting it. or is this just a necessary step in the road to recovery for football, that we need to do this, otherwise we're just never going to get the fans back in the grounds?
It's somewhere in between. I'm not sure where I am on this. I'd really like to be really just
on the fence.
I am right on the fence. I'd love to be one side or the other, but I'm not sure. It's a really, really difficult one, because in one way it's necessary to get the game going again, and we've talked about it already. The need to have supporters back in. The clubs need to have them as a revenue driver as well. But on the other hand, there's a danger that you're creating a two-tier society with the cans and cannots for whatever reason, be it age, that you fall later in the vaccine process. At the same time, you don't want it that people can go into a ground and potentially be carrying the virus. I mean, a European championship, a major championship without supporters, to me, I would rather it was played in 2022.
Yeah, it doesn't bear thinking about, does it?
I wouldn't find the interest in it. Amazingly, and it would be the one that Scotland qualify for.
Completely typical of Scotland.
Yeah. But yeah, I'm somewhere in the middle, and I've read quite a few pieces on it. That I know there's a difference in stance between the UK government and the Scottish government as well, and a lot of people think that maybe the vaccine passport should only be for overseas travel rather than domestic group meetings. I definitely see that side of the argument, but I also understand the importance of having supporters in the grounds for them as well, for the fans, because 15,000 people get to experience a game. So I probably have not answered your question, but I've given you my thoughts on it.
But no, that's the thing, because I don't think there is a right or wrong answer for this right now. I mean, it's something that's completely untested. We don't know what will actually happen. And I can see it in the comment section already, some people saying it is discrimination. And I can also see people saying, well, no, it's necessary. So there is a big divide on this. I mean, for me, the main thing, regardless of where you stand on it, is I want to get back into the ground. I miss going to the football so much. I mean, I can't believe it's been well over a year now since we've last been in the grounds. I think you were commentating on the last European game. There was Rangers versus Bayer Leverkusen on the Thursday night, and then it was supposed to be the Celtic Rangers game at the weekend, and it was called off. I mean, when you look back at that
prepping.
now,
I was doing my stats on the Friday morning for Motherwell against Aberdeen, and because that was going to be our live game that night, and I think at maybe about 2:00 or something, the call came through from the boss saying, "Yeah, you don't need to be at Fir Park tonight." And it was the same at Ibrox the night before. We wondered if that game was going to go ahead. And it actually became a very strange game to commentate on, because I think in the back of my mind, you're maybe not fully preparing for the game to go ahead, not 100%. You're thinking, oh, this game might get called here, and then of course it did. But yeah, it's very weird.
At that time, when you were getting ready for that game, and obviously you were getting ready for the Motherwell game, could you have imagined that a year from now we still wouldn't be in the position where fans are back in the ground?
No chance. I don't think anyone could. If anyone had said 13, 14 months ago that the pubs are all shut, the shops are shut, you can't go and see your family, you can't travel out of Glasgow or wherever you live. it's incredible. It would make for the worst movie script of all time. You know, when they do like disaster movies and they're like, let's get everyone stuck in their house for a year. It's grim.
You just know that that's going to happen. Samuel L. Jackson, Bruce Willis, they'll all be in these films that come out after this, and it'll be like The Lockdown or Social Distancing or something like that it'll be called. And we'll all pay money to go and watch and laugh at how it used to be. Hopefully, fingers crossed. But as you said, like obviously, football without fans, as Jock Stein once said, is nothing. And we've had a full year of that now. So to have the Euros with some fans in, hopefully it gives a sort of positivity that when we get towards the start of next season, there might actually be some fans back in the grounds for the first day of the league campaign. And I think that'll be crucial for teams going forward next season. You imagine you rock up on the first day of the season, or even pre-season for the Betfred Cup, because that always kicks off before the league, and you go to East Fife versus Edinburgh City, and there's 500-600 fans in the ground. That feeling will be amazing as you walk in.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was lucky enough to do a few of the Ross County games up at the Global Energy Stadium when they had 300, I think. And I did the Edinburgh-Glasgow game that was back in August, that I think they had 700. It was so nice to see. Just to see faces in seats. I mean, at Murrayfield, that's a 67,000-seater stadium. You put 700 people in it, and you barely notice them. But it's still great to see, and it became a talking point, obviously. So yeah, whatever numbers that we can get back in is great, but it has to be done safely.
Agreed, and I hope that it will be for next season. I can't wait to get back to the games. It's just, as you say, it's surreal to think that 13 months ago we never really knew how bad this was going to be. If it was going to be, I'm sure we'd have all got to that game that we didn't make because we had plans, or we left 5 minutes early. We wouldn't leave that 5 minutes early. We'd have stayed for the full 90 minutes. So hopefully these trials down south will be the start of the return to football for a lot of fans. And that continues in Scotland as well. So let's look forward to that for next season. I'm going to just touch on something that I ask my guests every time I have them on. And usually we do the show just before lunchtime. So this is when everyone starts getting hungry, because we start talking about the dream football dinner party. And you were on a shoot this morning with Stephen Craigan, weren't you, for doing some work for BT Sports? My dinner party. I was just making sure of that there. I had Stephen Craigan written down, but he's not coming. So for anyone that's watching for the first time or hasn't watched for a while, what happens here is Rory's got the choice of 4 people from the world of football, dead or alive, because we're bringing them back for 24 hours. We've found this magic machine that brings them back for 24 hours, but just like Cinderella, when the clock strikes 12, back they go. And they're coming to the Hamilton household for a bit of a dinner party. Now, we call it a dinner party, Rory, but you know, in Scotland it's a gaff, it's an empty, it's a gathering. We've had some English guests on, so we go with the dinner party theme. But first of all, who would be turning up at the door? In fact, before we even get to that, what's on the table for the guests when they come over? What are you a good cook? What's your speciality?
I love cooking. Really enjoy it. And yeah, definitely at the beginning of lockdown, certainly increased my repertoire a little bit. But my sort of go-to favourite is Guyanese goat curry and roti, which I learnt to make after school. I did a year teaching out in Guyana in South America, which is very much a Caribbean country rather than South American, so it's English speaking, more Creole, kind of like Jamaican, rather than being Spanish or Portuguese for the rest of South America. It was such an awesome time teaching kids out there and playing football and cricket and trying to teach them how to play rugby, but that was a non-starter. Had some great, like, awesome times playing football out there and taking some of the. So I played for the local team. We went to the national finals up in the capital. Played in front of about 10,000 people at the national stadium in a tournament that we were there for a week. Just like, staying in it was just a kind of concrete shed with hammocks slung between it, each night. And so that was really where I started learning to cook as well. And goat meat is the most consumed meat on the planet, which you might be surprised to know. But definitely. It makes for a fantastic curry. It's really, really good. So I do it every now and again. Always for Christmas Eve, I make the family a Guyanese goat curry and roti, which is just the bread that goes with it. Yeah.
Two questions. Obviously, so many people are now away to Google the Guyanese goat curry. But secondly, where do you get goat meat in Scotland?
Well, so I used to always just do it as a beef curry because I couldn't get it. And then one Christmas I was going up north where my parents stay. I didn't grow up there, but they're now up in Speyside. And there was a wee place on Great Western Road called Solly's, I think, just in Glasgow anyway. And somebody had said to me, "Oh, you can get goat meat in there." I thought, "Oh, brilliant! Rather than doing the beef curry, I'll do the goat curry." Brilliant. So went in, got a load of goat meat, and went up. And as Christmas Eve was approaching, it's a sort of 24-hour marinade and all this kind of stuff. And I started defrosting the goat because it was frozen, and it was not. There wasn't a lot of meat in there, but there was a lot of other things. And I was like, I can't yet. I made it, but we didn't eat very much of it, I have to say. And then it just turned out, my mum said to me the next day, it was maybe after Christmas, and she said, "You never guess what's opened up." And they live in the middle of nowhere, on the River Spey, but there's nobody around. It's this deserted little place, and just up the road from them, a couple had come in and taken over a farmhouse, and they turned it into a goat farm. And you can get goat literally 5 minutes from their door, and it is outstanding. Brilliant. It's like buying a piece of fillet steak or something like that, and it's absolutely superb. So that's where I get my goat meat from.
So Richard Murray's just said as well, there's a kiosk at Annie's Land that apparently sells goat meat.
Yeah, so I've seen it at a few of the food stalls and things like that. When you're allowed to go to things where you can do fun things. So I've had a few goat curries. There was a goat there was a Jamaican restaurant in Edinburgh that I went to that had a goat curry as well. And actually, the Rum Shack on the south side, you can get a good goat curry in there that we quite often go to before games at Hampden with Scotland.
And if the Rum Shack are interested in sponsoring Rory or this podcast, then they can get in touch.
You can take payment in rum or goat.
But speaking about fun things, like going to said restaurant, who would be the first person to come into the Hamilton household with that bottle of wine ready to sit down to this lovely goat curry?
I think this guy would probably have quite a few bottles, and I think it would be stronger than wine. It was a guy from the 50s and 60s with Brazil, Garincha. I'm sure most people will have heard of. I'm probably I base a lot of my football idols on books that I've read, and Rui Castro did Garincha's biography, and if you've not read it, it's absolutely outstanding, fascinating. A guy that just lived an incredible life and probably had absolutely no idea that he was living it, just because he'd had a very simple upbringing. didn't really understand the money that he was making in the game, and just continued to play for the love of it. And some of the, I almost went through a bit of an obsession at one stage, just looking back at trying to find old footage and trying to buy old jerseys of his. But I could never get a hold of a jersey. But some of the old footage of him is absolutely incredible. Just the way that he could manipulate a ball and tease an opponent. They always say in Brazil that he was the one that they loved more so than Pele. Garrincha was the sort of man of the people. And I mean, he was as usually these guys are. He was a total playboy and all this kind of stuff. So I think he would have quite a few tales to tell. He would bring a smile to people's face, whether they were watching him play football or in his company. Kind of similar to Ronaldinho, maybe of a modern era, but being from the 50s and 60s. Everything's a little bit more secretive, I guess. And his record for Brazil was absolutely incredible.
Yeah,
because I'm not sure he ever lost a game with Brazil. He didn't win every game.
No,
but because I think there was the odd draw in there, but his record was just absolutely unbelievable. So the book is outstanding. If you get the chance, then have a read of that.
Obviously playing in that great team alongside guys like Pele as well, and that era of Brazilian football was just unbelievable. As you say, that I don't think he did lose a game. If it did, it was probably quickly forgotten about because they went on to win the next 50 or 60 after that. But yeah, quality player, and I'm sure he would have plenty of stories to tell around the dinner table. Who's joining him at the table? Who's guest number 2?
I'm going to go with... Do you know what? I was going to write these down, and then I was like, I can't limit it to 4, so I'm just going to decide at the time.
Stephen Craigan, Chris Sutton, Alex Ray.
I'm going to go with Andrea Pirlo, because I think he might just be the coolest man on the planet. Again,
can't disagree with
that. Again, another fantastic book. His book is absolutely sensational, and I remember him particularly when he was younger, and he flipped between the Milan clubs, which I always found absolutely incredible. Growing up on the west coast of Scotland, thinking of guys flipping between Rangers and Celtic, and he just seemed to not be wanted by either at the beginning. But a guy that just has way too much charisma and cool and charm. It's just whenever you see him in a picture, he's like, oh, he looks so cool and he knows it. So I always think things like that, if you can pull it off, then I don't mind a bit of arrogance.
He's got that. Was it the picture of him wearing his own T-shirt as well when he was over in America?
Yeah.
That sums the guy up. If you can wear your own T-shirt, the only other person I've seen that's been able to do that was Macaulay Culkin, and they're in 2 different leagues. And I would definitely have Andrea Pirlo at my dinner party before Macaulay Culkin. So, I think he was a world-class player, and as you say, he's the epitome of cool. When you look at some of the footballers that have become sort of style icons, you're looking at Pep Guardiola and Andrea Pirlo, and they're just in that league. It's like we had David Ginola in the 90s, we've got Andrea Pirlo in the sort of noughties and 10s, and then Pep Guardiola. It's just, there's always want somebody to look up to in that sense, but unfortunately for people like me, we'll never look like Andrea Pirlo, so we just have to admire what he's brought to the game. Pirlo, Garrincha, who's joining them at the table?
I mean, I'm between 3. I'm between George Best, Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but I think I'm going to go for Dennis Law.
Oh. Well, I mean, that means we have to work out now in the next minute or so who the one is that's going to miss out, whether it be George Best or Zlatan. And I know who would be less impressed at that.
Yeah. It's actually both. So, Dennis Law. I had to get a Scotsman in there, and I just every time I see him, I just love him. I just think he's got a face, he's got a voice, he's got a laugh that I think you can just gravitate to. He always just brings a smile to my face, and he knows how to tell a good story, and he's got lots to tell of them, and also coming from an era that is less known to all of us. I think getting the insight into football from back then would be absolutely fascinating. So yeah, I think Dennis Law would be a good one. I mean, it's a shame to lose the other two, but I always thought Zlatan would make for a great movie if he'd not chosen football. If he'd just gone, because he's a big huffy guy. If he'd gone and put his drive into something else, where it would have actually led him, I think would make for a fascinating tale.
The problem is that film would never get greenlit unless Zlatan played Zlatan. That's the only way that would happen.
Of which he would. I'll get my casting director onto it.
So we have Garrincha, Pirlo, and the Lawman. It leaves one seat at the table. Who is filling it?
I'm going to go with Clarence Seedorf, because he can then act as translator between them all, because he's that cool that he can speak about 10 different languages. But his achievements in the game, absolutely brilliant. Three different European Cups with three or Champions Leagues with three different clubs. Travelled all around the world, and his background, I think, is from Suriname as well, which is right next door to Guyana. So he would appreciate the curry as well.
That's the most important thing. You've got to think about that when you're making it, is who you're feeding it to, as long as they'd appreciate it.
Although the problem might be that he could then critique it having tasted far better, because I don't remember the Guyanese being that impressed with my curry.
I mean, surely you'll just appreciate the fact he's been invited over and politely say it was lovely.
Absolutely.
So at the dinner party, we have Garrincha, Andrea Pirlo, Clarence Seedorf, and Dennis Law. I think that's a fantastic four. And the stories and the food and the banter would be top class.
And I missed out Gabriel Batistuta just because I love him. But, nah.
If we had a bigger dinner party, I'd be excited to see the full 11 that you've managed to pull together. Just quickly, because I know we're kind of running out of time, we did want to touch on this, and I want to get to your career briefly as well. Sergio Aguero looks as if he's going to be leaving Manchester City. In as few words as possible, is he the greatest Premier League era striker?
He's definitely in the conversation. That's an obvious. When I think of it, I probably think Thierry Henry. But Aguero is undoubtedly. I mean, because you get number nines, you get your Harry Kane, Alan Shearer have to be in there as well. And they're Van Nistelrooy. I think what Aguero and Henry do is so much more than score goals. Both absolutely incredible players that you love to watch. I probably just say Henry because it's from a time a little bit further back, really, and when you're younger, so you maybe idolize people a little bit more than when you're in your mid-30s. But yeah, you obviously still look up to these guys. But
so I did this. I did the stats, and if you go on goals per game, then Thierry Henry is rightly the number one. He scored 175 goals in 258 games over two spells with Arsenal. Sergio Aguero has 181 and 271, giving him a return of 0.67 goals per game. Henry is 0.68. So you can tell how close it
There's
is
nothing
between
in
them.
it.
And the one that will probably surpass them both if he stays at Spurs is Harry Kane. 160 goals, 237 games for a return of 0.868 goals per game as well. Same as Henry, and another fantastic talent. With Aguero leaving, the question is, do you think that Haaland will be his natural replacement, or is he out of City's price range? I know it's a daft question to ask considering the money they've got, but he could end up elsewhere.
I mean, he's obviously got a link with his dad. I think he will end up at one of the Spanish teams, and I think most likely Real Madrid. Just on gut, I think. I think he's the hottest property as a number 9 in European football at the moment. I think Lewandowski's probably a better. Well, I don't know. There's nothing between them really, but Lewandowski is but he's older. That's the thing. Yep. Holland has got so far to go, and his attributes for his age are just phenomenal. He's got raw power.
So scary. Yep.
He's so quick. He's so strong. Yeah, he's unbelievable. Wherever he goes, he will be worth the money. You know, I think they're talking about that being the new Ronaldo. Messi is going to be Mbappe or Holland.
Yep.
So he'll be a massive success. He seems to have his head screwed on as well. He seems a level-headed guy, which is really important. I think others have maybe let things get to their heads a little bit. Mbappe's teammate in Paris, perhaps, being one of them.
I mean, I'm guessing it won't be long before we hear the rumours of Haaland being spotted in the Blue Lagoon in Sucky Hall Street at some point. Because you know that's how clickbait season goes here in Scottish football. But no, generally I think he'll, if I'm going to put it out there, I think he'll end up at Barcelona. I think that's where he'll end up.
Yeah.
Maybe joined by
Aguero. He'll be Spain. Yeah, could be.
Could be an interesting.
Don't see him going to Real after his time with Atletico.
No, definitely not. No. One to watch out for over the summer. Now, we're just went over an hour, Rory. So I'm going to try and keep this as brief as possible. I don't want to keep you too long. I know you've got a lot to do. And we've got so much else coming up here on A State of Mind. But I can't kind of have you on the show without asking you about what your highlights and commentary have been. I can tell you mine as a Celtic fan. It was waking up in Rome the next morning, being on Twitter and hearing your voice as both you and Chris Sutton describe Olivier and Cham scoring about how they conquered Rome, or followed up by the Scottish League Cup final last season. And it isn't your time yet, Rangers. Just when you're coming up with, like, obviously it's live, it's in the moment. There can't be anything premeditated there. That's just comes to you so quickly. How is that something that's naturally you've always been able to do, or is it just something that's developed throughout your career?
I think it does develop because if it came really, really naturally, then you'd come out with lines like that in every game. I'm not that good. I think sometimes the situation really helps you out. I think things like the Olivier and Cham winner in Rome, and actually also the Christopher Julian one at home to Lazio as well.
Mm-hmm.
Were two goals that came so late on. I mean, the Encham one especially, because I think it was ticking into I think we're into the 4th minute of stoppage time.
Yeah.
The game is done. So you can go for it. You can fully commit to what has just happened. Celtic have won on Italian soil for the first time. and Rome is conquered.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I think you can't go in with a script on things like that because it wouldn't work. But it's strange. What I tend to do, it might be the night before, quite often the night before, just as I'm going to bed, I try and think through the game and what might happen, what scenarios might occur. You think, what's the coolest thing that could happen here? Olivier Jam scores in the last minute, things like that. And 99 times out of 100, nothing happens. It certainly doesn't happen as you envisage it. Otherwise, you'd make a lot more money on your betting accounts for your commentary gig. So I think it's thinking through things before they happen. The Christopher Julian one, because there's those two games against Lazio, and as the other guy messaged in the tweet earlier about the McGregor one with Zenit. The one with Julian, I get so many messages from fans about those goals and those moments. The Julian one was the Glaswegian Coliseum. That one came to me it was after they'd equalised, and I was like 75 minutes into the game, and I was like, Glasgow Celtic Park's like a Coliseum, and the game was going on, and Chris Sutton was chatting away. So I was like, I can think through this for a little bit, and then it just sort of, maybe Glaswegian Coliseum. So that was one different to the Encham one. That was just sort of I just said it, and the McGregor one, I think I just got very excited. But the Julian one sort of developed in the last 15 minutes of the game, and I was just scribbling away. I was like, but it basically needs somebody to score in the last minute for me to be able to use that, and thankfully did. And even though it needed a Fraser Forster save even later to keep the win, so it's cool. I love. I mean, already I know that I've got a massive game with Rangers Celtic in the cup, and I was on a walk earlier, and I just said to my girlfriend, I was like, I need to start thinking of what I want to say about that game. Because, start playing it out, and it's not to have a killer line on the winning goal, but because if that happens, you say something and people might go off that was lame or that was brilliant. People remember the moment, and if they think of the commentary when they think of that moment, then that's a really nice thing to have.
Honestly, the work that you've done for BT and Premier over the years, I think, has really endeared you to the Scottish football support, and definitely it makes the game easier to watch when you've got a good commentary team. And I think alongside yourself, Alex Ray, Stephen Craig and Chris Sutton, everyone else that's kind of worked alongside you, it's really improved the standard of Scottish football. And for that, on behalf of Scottish football, I'll say thank you. I'm sure you've heard it from other fans before, and I really want to thank you for coming on today. I know we've run over on this. We could probably went on for another hour with all the things that we could have discussed through your career so far. Just quickly, what is your goal for the rest of your commentary career? Is there one thing that you really still want to do, one thing you want to tick off the list?
I mean, I think my overall aim is just to stay in there, remain relevant. That people want to keep giving you a job is probably the main one. Probably an obvious one to say is to commentate a World Cup. But my issue with that is that I've been travelling with Scotland since 2007 was my first away game against Lithuania. And if Scotland were in a World Cup, I don't think that I would want to be on the microphone. I would want to be in the stands with my mates that I've travelled with for years and had the best time. Lost an earphone, sorry. And experiencing Europe and pubs and trains and all sorts of fun stories. I mean, there's a book in there, that's for sure. which is just something that I love, and going to football in different countries. So if Scotland weren't to qualify then to commentate at a World Cup, I would say, or to commentate at the Bombonera. The Bombonera is the ground that I want to go to in the world, and obviously for a derby against River Plate Boca at the Bombonera would be the game that I would love to be at. If I could commentate, I couldn't do it justice because you need to feel it, you need to understand it. Which, if it's a derby here, even if I'm not from Edinburgh, I've got a grasp of what the Edinburgh derby or the Dundee derby or the Glasgow derby means to those that are watching it. I might not be able to do Buenos Aires justice, but I would certainly enjoy myself trying.
You got to dream big, and it doesn't get much bigger than that. But Rory, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the Football Insomniac today. I really want to thank you for giving up your time to come on. For everyone that's watching, where can we find you on the social channels?
Good question. I think Twitter, let's see, I've got it up. It's at Hamilton Rory, because somebody thieved out Rory Hamilton. In Instagram, I'm Rory Hamilton Sport, but you'll see a lot of pictures of mountains and snowboards and my dog. I put occasional stuff from grounds, but if it's work related stuff, it tends to be on Twitter. Instagram's a little bit more of what I do out with work. Although I go to a lot of football grounds as a fan anyway, when we're allowed. So I do put stuff like that up. Or if I'm away doing a game with BT in Europe, then I put stuff up on that. But in the main, it's Twitter for work and Instagram for the rest.
A pleasure.
Facebook I don't really use anymore. I'm still on it, but I don't really use it.
Well, it's been great having you on. Next week I will be joined by country music star Kevin Maguire for what will be my final Football Insomniac of this series, before a massive relaunch in a couple of weeks' time, when I'll be joined by a brand new co-host and Football CFB's Callum McFadden, and we'll be moving to Friday nights at 6 p.m. So looking forward to doing a Friday football show, previewing the week's football and discussing what game Rory will be commentating on for Premier and for BT at that point. But Rory, thank you once again for joining me on the Football Insomniac. Thank you to everyone who's watched on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Facebook, Twitter, and on YouTube. Apologies. We'll be back next Wednesday, back at the usual time of 11 a.m. But until then, stay safe and take care.